Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.
This week at Safeway, shop the 10 for $10 produce sale. With the 10 for $10 produce sale, get items like large avocados, mangoes, green, red, orange, or yellow bell peppers, cucumbers, large lemons, or 16-ounce bags of Signature Farms baby-peeled carrots for the member price of just $1 each. Plus, select meats like Signature Farms 80% lean ground beef and Signature Select extra meaty pork loin back ribs are buy one, get one free this week. Hurry in before these deals are gone. Visit Safeway.com for more deals.
We are away, 1-0. How relieving that is after Sunday afternoon. Hello to all our Nest listeners. Hello to Drew Jones, my co-host, Daniel Garb here with you. The season's underway and the Eagles are 1-0, Drewy. But I tell you what, that was a nervous night over here in the East and a nervous arvo in the West.
Boy, we had to earn it, didn't we? And I think that's in keeping with the entirety of round one. We saw a couple of big dogs get knocked over, get shocked by good young sides, and that's what the Gold Coast Suns are. So leading into Sunday, my thoughts were massive game. Once Brisbane had lost, once Geelong had lost, it's like we're getting an opportunity to get one over potential top four rivals straight away, get a game on them. And Gold Coast, a tough team to play early in the season. So the burst at the end and then in the last quarter, obviously getting the job done for us. But other than that, it was a really nervous night.
I was panicky because of our early season draw. So for me, by halftime, I thought we'd win the game before we started, but I thought it would be tough. And then by halftime, when Gold Coast are in it and looking a good chance to win it, I was really panicky because of the games we've got coming up. Dogs away this week. Then we've got Port. Then it's the Saints away. Then it's Collingwood. Then it's Geelong away. And then it starts to open up a little bit on paper. I mean, we lose that game. Mate, it might sound a bit dramatic, but I'm starting to think with Shuey and Yo out and the start to that season, you know, it's going to be really tough to put ourselves in a strong position to actually contend. That's how significant it was. Like, we had to get those 4 points because, you know, breaking even with that early season fixture with Yo and Shuey out, it's going to be incredibly tough.
Yeah, so if you start the season, say 1-4, that puts us back to where we were last season. And, you know, despite great form and good wins through the middle and back part of the season, you're still chasing your tail. You can't afford any slip-ups. So, you know, last season when we were trying to get the ledger back, you know, towards even and then push into the top four, say that Bulldogs game where a few things go against you and you lose by 2 points, that's what ends up costing you top four. If you bank the wins early, that means you can afford a slip up or a bit of bad luck later down the track, which will probably hit you at some stage. So yeah, it's massively important. You know, if we get out of the first five at 3-2, you know, I think that's a massive result for us, and that can't happen without getting that win on Sunday. So yeah, it's massive, and you're right. In the context of the early part of the season, really important.
Okay, so we'll go through the votes for the game. Love this initiative that we put up on the Nest. We ask you for your 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, our listeners. We then give our 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 as well. And we compile the aggregate basically, and then break it down to a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 for the game, adding up all the listener votes, our votes as well. And we'll have the Nest medal at season's end. What a great addition to the podcast. We're growing week by week. We're doing it on the fly, but this is a beauty. The Nest medal, maybe we'll attribute it to a player as the season goes on. It'll be a work in progress, but the Nest medal as it is. So after we analyse the game, we'll give you the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, which the listeners have had a massive say in. So thank you so much for contributing to it. But the game against the Suns, Drewy, break down the pros and cons from your point of view for us. In fact, let's just start with the pros. What did you like? And then we'll go to some of the negatives.
The fast start I loved, and it shows again that from stoppage and set piece will be hard to match, will be hard to go with for the entirety of the season, no matter who we're playing. So Jared Witts is a good ruckman and he's a good nullifying ruckman. But in the first 5 minutes, Nick Nat took him to the absolute cleaners. We kicked 3 goals from 11 possessions. There was one particular centre clearance. It might have been the second one of the game that was so perfectly planned and executed. It was like just sumptuous to watch. I think Nick Nat did a sort of the soft tap down in front, and then it might have been Kelly or Sheed, but someone fired a handball backwards and then out to the side to a free player, and then I think it was Kelly that ended up delivering it inside 50, and then we got a goal. I think Darling may have kicked the second goal. But to see Allen and Darling firing early, particularly Oscar taking a strong mark out in front, nailing the goals, there was a lot of optimism about if you let this West Coast team off the chain in the middle of the ground with the 6-6-6, you're going to be punished. And so we can tear teams apart very quickly. So that 3-goal lead, that sustained us for quite a while once Gold Coast were able to get the game back onto even terms, or even to a point where they were nullifying us really effectively. And then again in the last quarter, we managed to put together that run. So if we can break even through periods of the game where the other team have got us under control around the stoppages, but then when we get in the ascendancy, pile on goals quickly, that holds us in really good stead to always be in the game. So despite no Yo and no Shuey, we still looked pretty sharp around stoppages. We didn't get massacred around the ball last time by the Suns. There was no repeat of that. I think Tim Kelly is a massive pro for us. He looked really sharp. Like, he looked in great nick. He looks lean. His skills were sensational. Chemistry looks good, around the ball. Him playing that kind of game is massive for us. And then Oscar Allen, I thought, was a huge pro, kicking 4 goals, a career best, but he just looks good. Like, he looks at the level. He looks clean. And then he did it, Garby, even though he was swinging into the back line as well. He's playing an important role for us because he's giving McGovern and Barrass a rest. Yeah. And maybe that's something that they've noted in the off-season that they need to do more of, is to keep them a little fresher. It probably showed, because then Barrass played a really good game as well. So, a lot of pros for us, but Allen, Kelly, and then our set-piece stoppage were 3 big ones for me.
The Allen Swingman move is so interesting because I think a lot of fans are unsure about it. They're like, just keep him forward. Why are you throwing him back? I don't think they're trying to turn him into a defender at all. I think it is just to, as you said, give the backs a chop out, and also just confuse the opposition defense. Like, where's Allen going now? Okay, what do we do to set up? Oh, now he's coming back. Now what do we do? It just mixes things up, and it causes a bit of chaos. All right, so you've got him. All right, now I've got Allen. You've got JK. All right, who's got Darling? That happening 2 or 3 times a game is really unsettling for a defense when you're throwing such quality down there. When you throw a resting ruck down, it's pretty easy. All right, mate, you take the resting ruck. We know what he can do. But you put someone like Allen down there, and then he goes back for 10. It really can cause some confusion. So I actually quite like it now. I've come around a bit. And I think it adds another dimension to the way that we play potentially. Obviously Tim Kelly looked fantastic just from the off. He looks so much quicker and leaner. I know he said in his press conference that he's not necessarily lighter in the kilos. He's just leaner in the body. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but it looks as if, let's be honest, he's dropped 2 or 3 from the start of last season, where he was carrying a few. And maybe we were in a bit of denial about it, Drewy, that he was a little heavy at the start of last season. It's Tim Kelly at his explosive best, which is so exciting for us and necessary considering our outs. I mean, the defensive game of Hearn, Barrass, and for me, Tommy Cole. Quite often in games, you talk about the midfielders who fired, and you say, all right, it was these 3 players who had a good one this week, and a couple others had a down week. We have so many quality defenders, and we actually say that about our defence. So, I mean, look, Shep and Gov had really good games, but it's Barrass, Cole, and Hearn who take the headlines in this one, and Shep and Gov are sort of not even spoken about. When you've got so many quality defenders, it's rare for a team to say that, but we can actually say that at West Coast, which I find quite exciting. And I mean, Barrass was brilliant. He's the player who's now starting to get calls. Mike Sheehan said it on the SEN Instagram. He responded to my comment saying Tommy Barrass deserves more credit. And, he's starting to get a bit of momentum in that sense in the East. Hearn, we know, has been quality for so long. He looks really sharp. Tommy Cole's a beauty. I love Tommy Cole. He is just a player who I think even amongst Eagles fans, probably deserves a little bit more credit now and deserves to be spoken about a bit more. I mean, he does such a good job at halfback, but then he steps up into the midfield and links up really well. I mean, he's been fantastic from the middle part of last season, and he's just a beauty. I think he's someone who can really rocket up our best and fairest rankings by the end of the season.
Yeah, agree. Really, since he dropped that mark in the 2018 grand final, he hasn't put a foot wrong since that moment. And he's always getting better. I think he's really settled in Western Australia after, 2018 was a tough year for him. He lost his dad. I think he's definitely a firm and entrenched part of the West Coast family, and he's a really important cog in our best 22. Like maybe at the start of the season, you were thinking, oh, does Cole go out for Witherden? Witherden's definitely got a place in the 22 at some stage, probably soon, but I don't think it's going to be at the expense of Cole. I think he's been really good for us. Dom Sheed was good. He accumulated a lot for us through the midfield. 34 possessions, 12 marks. So you can see he's playing as that link man through the centre of the ground. Like when we're using those 45 kicks, he's available. He's obviously running hard. And the interesting thing, Garby, was I don't know if you noticed during the game, but Andrew Gaff was very uncharacteristically quiet.
That's the weirdest Andrew Gaff game I've ever seen.
So the fact that Sheed was able to accumulate and get around to a lot of contests and be there for the chop out kicks a lot, that was important because Gaff just wasn't getting the footy. So I didn't pay a lot of attention to who was on that wing with him, but I assume that someone must have been doing a job, whether it was, Holman or Darcy McPherson or someone must have been checking him tightly because Lukosius was having an absolute party on the other wing. So, it was interesting, wasn't it, to see Gaff struggle to get the ball. And maybe he just didn't get as many kicks in the back line. But we're used to him just being metronomic in terms of getting around, getting lots of the footy, running all day. So that's one of the positives for us is when you look at who didn't have massive games, there's still some room there for growth. Like McGovern can probably play better than that. Gaff certainly can. Liam Ryan was in and out of the game, but I think he's still got another level as well, the way that he was playing at the end of last season. So there's still room for growth for West Coast. Through the middle part of the game, Gold Coast, they held us really well. And interesting listening to Simo talk after the game, Garby, about the fact that as much as the new rules encourage teams to move the ball quickly, he still felt that we were better when we had a more measured build up from defence to attack rather than a sort of the helter-skelter quick ball movement through the middle. So that's something that at least we know we can develop. Like we can get better at that. We can turn the ball over less when we're moving fast, the more that we get to practice it. And then we always know we've got the old reliable slow ball movement, hit your kicks. And then you've got the big boys to take the grabs up forward. So, if we've got different levers that we can pull through the season, change up the way we're playing, that's going to be positive.
Yeah, Gaff, it was weird. I mean, he got tagged out of it in a sense, and then he looked like he was struggling to move at one stage. He did stand up when the game was there to be won, and he got on the end of a few and he linked it up and he contributed then. But I can't remember a game like that from Andrew Gaff. Maybe there was a point where Simo said, listen, you're copping a heavy tag. It's freeing up Kelly. It's freeing up Sheed. We're effective. Don't worry about it too much. Like, just keep running hard. If you're not getting the ball, it's okay. You're taking a key player out of the game for them as well. And it's giving space to Kelly and Sheed, who are doing very well for us. And maybe that was the thinking there. Self-sacrificial in a sense, but he would have still tried to get into the game and he just couldn't. So hopefully he can respond this week against the Dogs. I really liked Zach Langdon's game. I really liked what he did. Like I was surprised he was picked after the concussion. When you consider Jermaine Jones preseason, we can talk about selection going into the Dogs game and him being left out against the Suns. But I thought Zach Langdon stood up late when it mattered, got on the end of a few, that really good chase, which I reckon inspired the team. When Gold Coast were getting on top, he put in that big tackle, can't remember who it was on, holding the ball. It got us going. The crowd got up. You could see the other players going, all right, now we lift, now we go. It was off the back of that chase. He takes a good mark late and gets us going, which contributed to a big goal. Zach Langdon held his own. That's really exciting for a player who didn't play in the position that we thought he would, which is solely as a forward pocket. He got up the ground and really contributed too.
Yeah, like 12 disposals, for Langdon, that's about right. That, you know, you're not going to expect big numbers from him. But he's a role player. He's brave. He's going to follow the coach's instructions, you know, to the nth degree. And that's why he's going to fit in so well with us. And to be honest, I'm surprised that GWS were willing to let him go and also barely played him last season, because you'd think, you know, with all the stars at GWS that a role player like Langdon would suit them down to the ground. So their loss is our gain, and, you know, potentially he's going to be a 6 or 8 year player for us at least. He's still pretty young. So, yeah, big tick for Langdon. What didn't you like, Garby?
Yeah, I mean, Gaff we've spoken about, didn't like his game. Outside of that, there wasn't too much. I think it was just maybe halting the momentum and the run on from the Suns when it came. It seemed as if defensively we could have done a little bit more on occasion. I know we had some good individual games from defenders structurally at times in terms of, you know, we love the West Coast system down back and the way they peel off. It just looked as if it didn't click as much as we would have liked early on. But we've got to remember as well, it's round one in what is kind of a shortened preseason. Like, the length of the preseason's the same, but we only had that one big preseason game, and we usually have 2. And I think a lot of the big teams are still in semi-preseason mode, which is why we saw some big upsets in round one. I think someone like Nick Naitanui is going to work his way into the season. Nick Nat had some big contributions, but he was quiet overall. I think he's someone who's going to take a little while to get going. And perhaps that defensive chemistry was just up and down a little bit in terms of knowing when to peel off, working together. And that allowed Gold Coast to get a bit of a run on. Credit to them. I mean, they're a good team. They're going to punish you. But, you know, we maybe made it a little bit too easy for them on occasion. So just working through a couple of those things was, you know, a bit of a con, but I think being early in the campaign without a couple of big preseason games to get it 100% right could be an excuse for that.
I think Ben King could have kicked 6. There was a couple of moments, like, he didn't quite clunk all of his marks. There were a couple of nearly moments for him. Like, there's going to be times over the next 8 years where Ben King gets hold of us and puts us to the sword. So I'm glad that, you know, he kicked 3 on Sunday. You know, he's going to be an absolute gun. It might be the last time for a while that he lets us get away with a few of those moments. But I think there's still plenty to like. I know we're going to get to the selections later. Just on Nathan Vardy, he only got 1 hit out for the game. I would hope that he'll improve in that area moving forward, because really the reason that he's in the team is to be competitive in the centre bounce when Nick's not there. Because
it was his first game for a while.
Yeah.
It was his first AFL game for over a year. So, yeah, I mean, I agree with you, but, you know, that big mark and goal he kicked late, that gives him the confidence going into this week, hopefully, that he can contribute a bit more. It's
going to be important this week because we've got the Dogs and we know they've got 2 rucks. So, we'll need something going forward. All right, do you want to go to the votes?
All right, let's go to the votes. So my 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, I went Tim Kelly 5. I just think when the game was there to be won, he stood up the most early in the game and then late in the game. So love the other performances, but when the heat was on, Kelly was the best, and he needed to in the absence of Yo and Shuey, of course. 4 for Oscar Allen. He similar, fantastic when the game was there to be won with his 4 goals. Dom Sheed 3, contributed the whole game, accumulated. I had Tommy Barrass 2, and then Tom Cole with the 1. Your 5, 4, 3, 2, 1?
Well, it was the same. So
exact same. Wow, yeah. we didn't even coordinate that or discuss it before. So
I was pretty close to giving Alan the 5. To be honest, it's pretty hard to split them, but I think Kelly's performance in the midfield where we were undermanned was really important. So, let's say if Kennedy wasn't playing and Oscar Allen had stood up and kicked 4 and we win the game, I might feel differently. But I think Allen's even got another level above to go, which is so exciting.
So, and then we took into account our listener votes, and we compiled all of them on aggregate. The aggregate was Oscar Allen 37, Kelly 33, Hearn 26, Sheed 26, Barrass with 12, and Cole with 6. Then we added our votes on top of that, and it worked out to Allen 5, Kelly with the 4. Hearn gets the 3 because he had more 5 votes and more big votes than she. They actually finished level. but Hearn got more of the 5 and 4s than Sheed did. So he gets the 3, Sheed with the 2, and Tom Barrass gets the 1. Cole got a lot of votes, but only 1 votes from everyone.
Yeah.
Didn't get more than the 1, so that held him back. So the Nest medal to start the season, 5 for Allen, 4 for Kelly, 3 for Hearn, 2 for Sheed, and 1 for Tom Barrass. So we're away.
Beautiful. Good start.
All right, this week against the Dogs, what changes would you like? Me personally, okay, I left this out of the cons, but I didn't like Jack Petruccelli's game. So when it was hot and when we needed him to stand up, he was anonymous. Then he got on the end of it late when the game was won. Mate, how many times have we seen that? Like, how many times have we seen that over the years? A Sunday afternoon game, the Eagles cruise, and a player on the outside like a Petch, who I like, by the way, and think can contribute, but I just don't think he took his chance in this one. Then he gets on the end of a few later on and he gets his confidence up and you go, oh, well, he's in the team next week. Nah, not for me. Not when you got Jermaine Jones, who I think should have been in the team anyway, sitting on the sidelines as the medical sub. For me, that's a straight swap. Jones in, Petch goes to the medical sub, and that's the only change for this week.
Yeah, I agree. I texted you on Sunday, I think it was, just saying I think we've missed a trick with Jones. He was playing well in the preseason. You know, a guy who's still young, hasn't played a lot of senior footy. Like, let's get him in there and play him while he's in form and while his confidence is up. And everything that I saw from him during the preseason and in the highlights of the game behind closed doors between West Coast and Freo, I really liked. I liked that they were using him in centre bounce. You know, that he went back with a flight, put his body on the line in a practice game. You know, that shows that he's tough, he's engaged. So I think it will be a mistake if Jones doesn't play in the 22 this week. And I think he gives us a lot of attributes that we're looking for right now. So I really hope that Jermaine Jones plays. And I think it's probably at the expense of Petruccelli, and he probably goes to the sub. The fact that he got to play a full game last week means they won't feel, pressured or bad about dropping him into the sub. And then you never know, like, something might happen early in the game and he gets a decent run out anyway, because balancing that, the sub and who misses out on playing, for the Waffle Eagles, etc., that's going to be a juggling act all season. The non-Witherden selection was a bit of a surprise, even though Simo hinted at it a little bit in his press conference. I'd like to see him in the team, but I think it's going to be hard to bring him in this week because of the fact we're coming off a victory and there's probably not any injuries that we know of. But the sooner that he's into the team, the better. I guess it's a good sign for our depth that a couple of players who we thought were probably locks round one didn't make it. But yeah, I think most likely Jones in this week.
I agree with that. Yeah, Witherden will get a chance, but the backline's really settled and their big performances there. And he was given a chance in pre-season and he was a bit up and down. He showed some good moments and then he, had a couple of moments when he went, oh, okay, he's not quite settled yet. So they've obviously noticed that and said, well, this is a really good backline, a good team. You just got to do a bit more to get in. So that will happen sooner rather than later, but I wouldn't think so for this week. I'm worried about the game though, Drew. I just think it's a really tough ask to take on the Dogs away from home with their midfield without Shuey and Yo. I think it could be too much for us in that sense. I think a back line can hold up against their forward line easily. Our forward line can be damaging, but with two prime movers out against Bont, Bailey Smith, Treloar, Lockie Hunter, Dunkley, it's going to be really tough. And with their speed as well on that ground, I'm worried. I think it'd be a big win for us if we can manage it, and I think it might be too tough of an ask.
Yeah, so the only thing, Garby, that I think really goes in our favour is the potency of their forward 50 is below average. So that's just where they're at. Jamari Ugle-Hagan's still a couple of years away. Josh Shaki hasn't panned out. Even Sam Lloyd, who was one of their leading goal kickers last year, has retired. So if we can keep Josh Bruce under wraps, and I'm backing Tom Barrass to do that, then it's really role players in their forward line from there on that we need to keep a hold of. So as much as the midfield is stacked, if we can keep their forward 50 players under control, then I think we'll stay in the game. I went to the Collingwood Bulldogs game at the G last Friday night, and after the first 5 minutes, I'm sure you were watching, where the Dogs just tore Collingwood apart. But they went into panic mode in the box and basically flooded every player back. So Collingwood were just defending the entire game because the Bulldogs were just belting them around the ball. Like they were winning contested ball. Bailey Smith, who was the one who was supposed to get pushed out of the midfield, has 35 and kicks 2 off a wing. That's something that needs to be like that. We have to look at that. You know, even like Lipinski had 26 and he probably even gets pushed off the wing because Lockie Hunter's playing there and Bailey Smith. Yeah. So a lot of guys got big numbers. I don't anticipate that happening again, but the point you make is valid about the midfield. So there's going to have to be some work done on keeping a few of those guys quiet. You know, Libba's really tough inside. Dunkley's a beast around the ball. We can't match them for that kind of inside grunt. Like we just don't have that in our team. Yeah. So that's probably the worry is inside and then getting outside to those other guys.
I left out McRae as well, who's just about the best accumulator in the league right now. Yep. I mean, it's a scary midfield. They remind me a lot of us in 05-06, whereby it's just midfield talent oozing through the team and they'll get it done with an average forward line. Like if Norden comes up and starts dominating or Ugle-Hagan comes through, they've got some serious talent there. But let's be honest, Josh Bruce is just a role player at best. And their forward line doesn't offer much outside of that. But we had that. We won a premiership with that. We won a premiership with a workman-like centre-half forward in Ash Hansen, a good target in Quinton Lynch. And that was pretty much it. And then it was our midfielders floating through because you had so many of them. You chucked a Cuz forward. Juddy would kick you a couple of goals. Embley would go forward and kick you a couple. And we won a flag. I can see that with the Dogs. They'll just start flowing those players through. They'll kick you the goals that you need. The other forwards will contribute a bit. And they'll be a contender. So we just need to be wary of those 2 or 3 midfielders getting off the chain, which I just fear without Yo and Shuey may be too hard to stop. With those 2 in the Eagles team, I reckon it's an even ball game. Yeah,
it's a big game for Kelly. Again, he's going to have to stand up. Gaff's going to have to be better, and we'll need more of the same from Sheed. Xavier O'Neill showed some promising signs last week, 18 disposals, but this is a massive test for someone like him. You know, he's only played a handful of games, but when he's in the midfield, when he's going to be around the ball, you know, he's going to be up against, 4 or 5 really quality players. So, yeah, our depth will get tested for sure. I mean, if Jermaine Jones does play, he may well spend a bit of time in there as well. And, at least he's tough. We know around the ball, he's going to put his head over it. So that's going to be a positive for us. So, yeah, big test for us. And, the Dogs are pretty heavily favoured. The one thing about the Dogs is that they're always the hype team at the start of the season. So if we can knock them down a peg, we like playing at Marvel Stadium, Garby. We haven't lost at Marvel too much over the last probably 3 or 4 years. I can't remember too many that we've dropped there. So we play the ground well, but it's going to be a good test. One good thing is the weather in Melbourne is terrible. So the fact that we're playing indoors, I think, is good for us. Not sure the rain and slippery conditions really suit us that much.
Yeah, I think it suits them as well, though, with their pace. A big game for Liam Duggan. He did nicely, obviously, in midfield, as we knew he would. But, you can't give him a tagging task because there's too many options there. So whoever he's up against, he just needs to lock down that contest time after time and then help us go the other way. Let's move on to what has been a big talking point amongst Eagles fans, no doubt. If you haven't seen it, we're not going to provide too many spoilers. But get out there and watch it because it's an awesome production that is making their mark on Amazon Prime. It is just so good, enlightening in such a grand way on the AFL system and the pressures of AFL, and the insights in the doco are just unbelievable. The behind-the-scenes access that you get from coaches' speeches, player speeches, just brilliant. And the Eagles feature, which is the best part of it. So they follow Nick Nat, and that allows you to watch a lot of Simo's chats and speeches to the team. And I just found it riveting, Drewy. Loved every moment of it and gave us such a great insight into our coach and our club.
Yeah, I'm almost sad now that I've finished it because I know that there's not another one's not coming this season. So we have to wait a while if there's going to be another one. Almost wish that they take all the storylines that they had to leave out of the first series and then just rehash them into a series 2, just for the real rusted on fans who were desperate for content, because they had to leave a fair bit out there. What was the highlight for you, do you think?
So much of it. Look, the highlight was the general behind the scenes access to coaches' speeches and so on and so forth. The people who stood out, I think Rory Sloane will be a very good coach one day. He just comes across as super impressive. The Cornelio GWS situation was fascinating. I think, it showed up some of his deficiencies as a captain, but areas that he can maybe improve upon. And if he does come good this season and GWS, have an above par campaign, what a story that would be that he's been able to rectify some of that. Leon Cameron, I found really interesting. I think he's a coach that people thought was soft and that allowed his team to get away with too much. I mean, you watch this doco and you go, it's anything but. Not saying he's necessarily a good coach, but he gives it to his team and he takes down his big names and he's not afraid to put it on them that they haven't been good enough. I found that really interesting. And then from an Eagles point of view, just Adam Simpson and how much he does play on the emotion. I think we've always thought with Simo, he's such a brilliant tactical coach and a measured coach, and he doesn't give the rah-rah-rahs. But in his speeches, he can lay it down sometimes, and he can find that trigger point, if you like, emotionally with the team as well to get them going. And I love that about him. And the Riley O'Brien, Nick Nat saga, where he says to Nick, I know you're a really good guy, and part of you wants to acknowledge that it was a mistake from Riley O'Brien to post those notes about you. But I know another part of you wants to rip his head off. I want you to do the second bit.
Yeah.
I love that leading into the game. He plays on that a lot more than I thought he would, Adam Simpson.
Yeah. Yeah. I liked the West Coast part of it was really good. I don't want to give away too much, but there's a really great moment with Nick Nat hanging out with a few of the Eagles boys and Sonny Walters, where you see like another side of Nick Nat that we haven't seen before. Simo talking to the players when I reckon we're at 1-3 behind the scenes there. Right. Like that was one of my favourite moments where he sort of, I won't give it all away, but sort of says, publicly we'll back you to the hilt. But, he really lays down the law. And I think the almost my favourite part of the doco where I was most relaxed was when we had gone back home. So I knew all the West Coast stuff was going to be positive, just seeing us winning games at home and the momentum really building behind us. Pretty sad, seeing how the players, they could barely see their families and how hard it was for Eddie Betts with his kids and Anna back home and how much his form sort of fell away as a result. So, yeah, it's really worth watching. It's the Amazon. If you just get the 1 month of it for $6 and smash out the episodes, it's not going to cost you too much. So it's definitely worth doing. And yeah, hopefully there's more of it to come, and hopefully it encourages even more documentaries, from other companies around Australia on the AFL, because it was awesome.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough for people to budget because they've got to get their Nest Patreon, of course, which is far more important. But outside of that, then go with it. Also, it's a 30-day free trial, I think. So just watch within your 30-day free trials and then cancel. I mean, you can get away with it in that sense. But yeah, I stepped away from it going, we underestimate sometimes the pressures that some players and people at AFL clubs are under. Like people often think, they go out there and play a tough game and they cop some stuff in the press, but they're getting paid really well and they've got a great life. It's not that bad. You watch some of this and you go, I mean, you can understand how it can really affect someone's mental health, the constant pressure that you're under. Someone like Cornelio with what's going on at GWS. I mean, that's just constantly debilitating for him, I'm sure, all through the season. Like a really tough thing to work through. And for coaches, how much pressure they're under. You look at the Adelaide Crows. That was a great insight. A team that loses, 13 games in a row, whatever it was. Man, what the impact that had on a guy like Matthew Nixon his first season and some of their players. Fascinating to watch. So I really love that aspect of it, and getting insight into the Eagles is great. One other aspect of the Eagles that was interesting is the fact that they have their own minister. So some players actually do prayers before a game, and it's obviously an optional thing because there's only 5 or 6 players that do it. Nick Nat's one of them, Liam Duggan, Oscar Allen, I think maybe Brendan Archie was one, Liam Ryan maybe. 5 or 6 players before every game sit down with the priest and say a prayer and share their thoughts. And that was an aspect of the Eagles that I was surprised about. And when COVID hits, they actually don't take their dietitian to the Gold Coast, but they take their priest. So obviously they really prioritise that.
Yeah, well, I guess the dietitian can keep working remotely, but you have to have the chaplain there. So that was something that definitely surprised me. I guess it's just, ignorance from our point of view to not have considered that would be an aspect of the club. But yeah, very interesting. That's for sure. Garby, you picked up on the mental health aspect there, which is actually something I just wanted to talk about briefly at the back end of the pod. I'm sure all the listeners are well aware of Danny Frawley and his plight with mental health, which eventually led to him passing away. Well, on Saturday night, it is Melbourne against St Kilda at Marvel Stadium, which is called Spuds Game, which is time to talk. So between yourself and I, we encourage everyone to, if you are having problems, to find someone that you love and trust and talk about how you're feeling. But just a suggestion, all the proceeds from the game are going to Movember, Garby, and also to the Danny Frawley Centre for Mental Health, which is going to be based at Moorabbin, where St Kilda train and where their club is. Now, I'm thinking of a different way that we might be able to contribute. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of listeners out there, and yourself and I included in this, Garby, who like to have a little flutter on the AFL over the weekend. Mm-hmm. I'm suggesting if you have a multi on the West Coast game or a multi over the weekend or something, maybe let's chuck our winnings and donate that to the cause. So maybe Movember or to the Danny Frawley Centre for Mental Health. So West Coast are paying $2.50. Not a bad. Maybe you give them a few points head start and get a few possessions and goal kickers in there. And if you have a win on the punt, maybe just the winnings, maybe we donate that, and that can be our little contribution to supporting mental health and the Time to Talk Spuds Game.
Love it, Drewy. Great initiative, and hopefully everyone gets behind it and contributes a bit, because it's obviously a very important aspect of society right now and something that's growing, and Spuds Game will help accelerate that. And we're happy to get behind it and hope everyone else does as well. Mate, good chat. We're off and away. We got the win, and I think we've analysed every single aspect of it. We got the Nest Medal votes as well. We'll post them on Twitter, and we look forward to getting your contributions on that all throughout the season to allow you to share your thoughts on who the best were from the weekend. Thanks to everyone for listening. Thanks to everyone for being a part of it week in, week out. And we move forward to the Dogs, and hopefully we can go 2-0. If we are, wow, what a situation that would be, because it's a really tough game coming up on the weekend. Drewy, thank you, mate.
Thanks, Garby. Head to the Patreon. There's going to be lots of pre-game stuff and all your reviews from the games as well. And let's go 2-0. Go Eagles.
This week at Safeway, shop the 10 for $10 produce sale. With the 10 for $10 produce sale, get items like large avocados, mangoes, green, red, orange, or yellow bell peppers, cucumbers, large lemons, or 16-ounce bags of Signature Farms baby-peeled carrots for the member price of just $1 each. Plus, select meats like Signature Farms 80% lean ground beef and Signature Select extra meaty pork loin back ribs are buy one, get one free this week. Hurry in before these deals are gone. Visit Safeway.com for more deals.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.